Do you like zucchini noodles? I sure do. And my attachment here to my stand-up mixer makes quick work of spiralizing those beautiful zucchinis. You know, when your garden is overflowing with summer squash, your dehydrator can come to the rescue. I especially love to shred the zucchini, and here I showed you that I have a 2-cup measure, and I'll tell you why I only put 2 cups on the tray here in a moment. Then I put the rest of my shredded zucchini on another tray, and you know, you don't have to be real careful about separating it. They're going to stack on top of each other a little bit, and it will work out just fine. It took 12 hours for all of my squash at 125 degrees to get dehydrated, and after that I put it in a plastic bag. I do that with anything I dehydrate and let it stay in the bag overnight. That way I can doubly tell that it's completely free of condensation. Now remember that 2 cups? It is now a scant ½ cup. The question comes up a lot about how I store my dehydrated foods. I kind of give it a double whammy. I put in oxygen absorbers. Those are 100 cc's, which work for a quart. Here I'm showing you that if it's good, it should be pliable and not hard. If it's hard, then you need to use a new oxygen absorber because that one is used up. Now, storing your oxygen absorbers, you need to get it vacuum sealed pretty quickly. And here I am showing you how I do that. When I first cut the bag, I cut it long. That way I can use the same bag and not be too wasteful, because when you seal it, it does take up about 1.5 to 2 inches at the top. And in addition to the oxygen absorber, I use my jar sealer to vacuum seal these as well. You know, the oxygen absorber removes the oxygen. The vacuum sealer removes the air, but the vacuum sealer doesn't remove all of the oxygen because there's still a little bit around the lid. So that is why I like to do both. You don't have to. You could do an either or, but with storing foods, I like to be extra judicious. So I have spiralized zucchini, shredded zucchini, and in the other 2 jars here I have some yellow summer squash that was sliced in 1/4-inch slices and dehydrated at the same temp right along with the zucchini. Don't forget to label. This Bianco Lungo squash is really a tender squash. You ought to try that Italian variety. So there we have my little squash for the first round of dehydrating. Now let's talk about how to rehydrate. Actually, there's a quick method. I am using the overnight method. So you can have your choice. I'll show you both. But here I am getting my jar very hot. Our hot water gets really super hot. But I want to heat up that jar. And then I put it on a silicone mat. That's just a little pot holder. And I'm going to pour my dried scant cup of zucchini into the jar. And then very carefully you want to add boiling water. I do about 1 inch at a time. The glass needs to be hot. That way you don't get thermal shock and have an exploding glass. We don't want that. Put the lid on. And as you can see here, ooh, it's hot. Let it come to room temp, put it in the fridge overnight. And this is what it looked like the next morning. Actually, it only took 2 or 3 hours in the refrigerator to get to that point. But I'm draining it. And now we're going to cook up something yummy. To make this yummy lemony zucchini wonder, you want to preheat your oven first at 350 degrees. The first step is to zest some lemon. You're going to need about 2 teaspoons worth. and this big old fat lemon will do the trick. I'm kind of measuring and showing you here that that lemon did about 2 teaspoons. So next up, I'm adding 2 cups of sugar to my mixing bowl. And then adding in those 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. Working with really clean hands, I'm combining that sugar and the zest, rubbing it together with my fingers until it's very fragrant. You won't miss the lemony smell. Now we're cutting that lemon in half, and we need to get the juice out of it. For the whole recipe, you're going to need anywhere from 3 to 4 tablespoons. And this nice juicy lemon gives me exactly that much. But for now, we're just adding 1 tablespoon of that lemon juice to the sugar mixture. Now I'm adding in 6 ounces of sour cream. You could actually use Greek yogurt, either lemon or vanilla flavored if you preferred, but I prefer the sour cream. Plus, I didn't have the yogurt on hand. To this, we're going to add 1 cup of canola oil or vegetable oil and blend it until it is well mixed. After combined, you're going to need 3 large eggs or 4 small to medium eggs, and you want to add them one at a time until they are completely blended. In a separate bowl, we're going to add our dry ingredients. 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. I have a half teaspoon measure there, that's why I'm adding 2 of them. And you want 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And sift, sift, sift. You're going to add your dry ingredients to your wet, and you just want to mix just until combined. You add in 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, and of course, the zucchini, the 2 cups there, and we're going to stir until mixed. Now you're going to need to divide these between 2 8.5 by 4 bread pans. I don't have 2 exactly the same, so that decorative one actually is the Thanksgiving one, so ours will turn out looking like pumpkins. You're going to bake this for 55 to 60 minutes. While those yummy loaves were in the oven, I started making the glaze for the top of the bread using 1 cup of powdered sugar, and to that I am adding 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now if it's a little too thick, you can always add a little bit more of that freshly squeezed lemon juice. Stir it very well to a beautiful creamy glaze consistency. You also want to zest some more lemon, about 2 tablespoons. Now I'm checking my loaves with my very professional cake tester. And it comes out clean, so they are ready to put on a wire rack to cool, at least 10 or 20 minutes. The lemon zucchini loaves have been removed from the pan, and now I am drizzling that lemony sweet glaze all over the tops of them. Oh my goodness. Not calorie free, but sure is a treat. To begin my squash au gratin, I have added 1 cup of milk and 1 cup of water to the pan and 2 tablespoons of butter. Now I'm adding a generous amount of salt and pepper and 1 tablespoon of flour. You want to whisk that in really, really well. And you want to bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, turn the heat off and set it aside. Well, as I sometimes do, I forgot to turn the camera on, so I'm just going to explain. There's no way for me to undo this and re-explain it. So, I took a cup of my Bianca Lungo squash, dehydrated, and I laid them in the bottom of the pan, not rehydrated at all. On top of that, because I don't have any more dehydrated onions, I cut up kind of a medium-sized white onion in thin slices and laid that on top. Next, I added 1/2 cup of the white aged cheddar cheese that I had left over from when I made that wonderful tomato pie. Poured the milk over the top and sprinkled the rest of the 1/2 cup of aged cheddar cheese. So again, it was a total of 1 cup. This is a 1/2 recipe. It's going to bake for 40 minutes or so until it's bubbly and golden brown. It's out of the oven, and now I need to let it sit and rest to firm up for about 10 minutes. The squash au gratin is ready. Oh, it has a great flavor and will go wonderfully with our pulled pork tonight. Before your vegetables head to the dehydrator, you're going to need to either steam, blanch, boil, or bake in some way. It's vegetable dependent. But I parboil the squash. Now with zucchini and the soft-skinned Bianca Lunga squash, I only parboiled for about 60 seconds. But this yellow squash, they have a lot tougher skin, so I let it parboil for about 2 minutes. Then in an ice water bath it goes, and it rests there, maybe 5 minutes before you decide what you want to do with your squash. Sliced, diced, shredded. It's time to rehydrate some of that summer squash to make my deep fried squash recipe. On the stove, I have some water coming to a boil while I am pulling out a few pieces of squash for Randy and I for dinner tonight to go with our pulled pork. After you've pulled out your pieces and the water is boiling, bring it over to the counter and you drop your squash in the boiling water and cover it. And this is going to be about a 15 to 20 minute soak. After the soak, I just simply take them out and put them on paper towels. I don't pat them, I just let them lay there while I'm getting all of my goodie stuff ready for deep frying. Whether I am deep frying squash, zucchini, or green tomatoes, This is how I begin. In this bowl, I have 1 egg and 1/4 cup of buttermilk, and I've laid my squash pieces in there and I'm letting them soak for 30 minutes. Now in this bowl, I'm making the bread coating, and I start with cornmeal and all-purpose flour, equal parts of each one. Now I just used 1/2 cup of each. To that, I have added a heaping tablespoon of a mixture of Creole, Tony Cuchera, and our other favorite Cajun spice, Slap Ya Mama. To that, I've also added about 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of salt and freshly ground pepper. While my oil is heating up for frying, I prep my squash. Now on this pan, I have a piece of wax paper, and I've already dipped all the squash in my breading mixture once. But after it sits for a little bit, it can get a little sticky, so I like to do it again, and it gives it an extra coating just before frying it up. Time to fry. I test the heat of my oil by tossing in a few of the crumbly mixture and see how it's frying up. It's kind of a trial and error thing to get the hang of getting your oil at just the right temperature. 365 is where you want it to be, but most of us don't have gauges where we know exactly how hot the oil is. You don't want it too cold or your vegetables will soak up too much oil, and you don't want it too hot because then it will cook too quickly and not cook the vegetables. But this is just right. If your oil is just right, it should only take about 2 or 3 minutes to fry your squash. When they're golden brown, you want to take them out and drain them onto a paper towel. Every now and again, it's nice to have a little Southern comfort goodness.